Commissioner here at the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. It's a pleasure to be with everyone this morning for this press conference where we're talking about a challenge that is impacting consumers here in our state, but around the country, around the globe, which is increasing energy commodity prices. Connecticut residents and businesses, like everyone else around the U.S. and the world, are unfortunately seeing the impact of rising energy prices. This is due to external factors such as the investment decisions of oil and gas producers, the pandemic, and severe weather events. And this event this morning is to talk about how consumers may be impacted. I'm really pleased to be here with Governor Lamont, who has called our agencies together to ensure that the administration is doing everything that we can to help protect consumers, both in terms of policies to keep prices down, as well as programs to provide needed relief for families and businesses that might be struggling with energy costs this winter. So you'll be hearing from me as well as from Commissioner Deidre Gifford from DSS, from Commissioner Mascara-Bruno from the Department of Housing, and Chairman Marissa Gillette from the Public Utility Regulatory Authority about the various programs and policies we have in place to meet this challenge. So just briefly, I want to share with folks, of course, here we go, a brief overview of, here we go, what's happening out there, and what are these dynamics that are causing energy commodity prices to go up. So first off, during the pandemic, we saw a significant decline in demand for fossil fuels, particularly natural gas and oil, as businesses shut down, as driving curtailed, and other impacts on our economy reduced demand for energy. And as a result, we saw oil and gas producers curtailing their production and returning money to shareholders. Now, as a result of the COVID recovery, we've seen a record increase in economic activity as the economy is roaring back, and that has meant that energy demand is increasing, and in fact, increasing faster than expected as a result of the strong recovery. The challenge is that production is not keeping pace. And certainly, certain weather conditions have impacted that as well. Hurricane Ida, for example, disrupting energy production, energy supply, as well as labor and supply chain shortages. Most of these are impacts that are occurring outside of, beyond our borders. Connecticut is not a fossil fuel producer, but it certainly impacts us to the extent that our state and we continue to rely on fossil fuels for electricity power generation, for transportation, and for heating. And so the consequence is that we are seeing some of these impacts and commodity price spikes impacting energy prices here in Connecticut. However, I think there are some important areas where Connecticut is faring a little bit better than our neighboring states, and I just want to highlight some of those. So I don't want to diminish the impact that people are going to be seeing. In certain areas, we are cautiously optimistic that Connecticut consumers will not be experiencing price spikes, at least in the electricity area, similar to what other states may be experiencing. So for example, I'll just talk briefly about the generation supply portion of your electricity bill. Of course, there are multiple components of your energy bill: transmission, distribution, and generation. And the generation portion of the bill is approximately 30% of customer bills. But just in the last week, we've had announcements from Eversource and United Illuminating indicating that, sharing their latest rates that are going to be available for standard service for customers here in Connecticut. We saw Eversource announcing that their rate for these new standard service rates go into effect on January 1st and extend through the middle of 2022. Eversource announced that they will be seeing an increase from 7 cents per kilowatt hour to about 11.1 cents per kilowatt hour for generation. United Illuminating also noted an increase from 8 cents to 10.7 cents per kilowatt hour. So these are increases. We typically see the generation service rate increase when we go from the summer to the winter period. But that said, these increase, and also I'll note that, for example, at 7 cents per kilowatt hour this summer, that's a very extraordinarily low price that we've seen for generation, again, as a result of that reduced demand that was occurring during COVID. So just to put this into context, here's the standard service generation rates going back to 2014. So this is certainly an increase that customers are going to feel, but this increase in standard service rates is not as high as we've seen in past winters, and so that's going to provide a little bit of a mitigating factor for customers. And we'll talk a little bit about why that's the case. But in addition to the electricity generation rate increase, we also know that customers are seeing increases in their heating fuels. So natural gas customers have been advised by their gas utilities that we should expect rates for gas supply to be increasing on the order of about 10 to 20%, and that will change and could be affected by changes in commodity prices that are happening month to month. Also, for families and businesses that are heating with heating oil, which is approximately 44% of residents in our state, they can expect prices to increase by 40% above last year. And that's a 15% increase over the average of the last 5 years. So this is a significant impact for families and businesses that we're very sensitive to and watching closely. That said, I think that there are some important ways that Connecticut's policies and programs are proving their worth and their success in this time of volatile commodity prices. Just speaking from the electricity in the electricity sector, there are a number of different measures and policies Connecticut's put in place that are helping us right now. First off, we've been investing for many years in diversifying our fuel mix. One of the reasons that we see electricity prices going up is because the ICE New England electricity market is heavily dependent on natural gas for generation as a result of the design choices that the ICE New England has made. And that means that when natural gas fuel prices increase, electricity prices increase in tandem. So the Lamont administration has been working hard to diversify our fuel mix, not only because it helps to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but also because it provides investing in things like energy efficiency, in renewables, and especially preventing the region's largest nuclear facility from going offline. Those investments are critical for providing for more diversity of fuel sources in the region, lower cost fuel sources that can help to blunt some of the impact of these increases in commodity prices in the ICE New England market. In addition, so as folks are aware, just for example, in 2019, Connecticut took action to prevent the Millstone facility from retiring. This was a critical step that saved ratepayers approximately $2 billion in replacement costs, and it ensured we could retain a large carbon-free resource to provide for that diverse and reliable fuel mix. We've also procured 710 megawatts of grid-scale solar. We've invested over 20 years in more than 445 megawatts of energy efficiency. This is where we see an additional value of those resources in providing for fuel diversity. And of course, we also have invested and supported behind-the-meter programs for rooftop solar. Pura has been leading the way in an energy storage program. All of those investments will help to provide for some counterbalance to these fossil fuel price increases. We also are concerned, of course, about the ICE New England market's natural gas dependence, not only because of the way that it exposes us to increases in natural gas prices on this sort of fossil fuel price roller coaster, but also because the ICE New England market is particularly sensitive to gas supply constraints that could challenge the reliability of the electric grid. So in addition to diversifying the fuel mix, we know that investments in energy efficiency are also critical to provide for fuel diversity and also for programs and services that are going to be available to consumers to help lower their energy bills. And Governor Lamont, in 2 successive budget cycles, has protected the energy efficiency funds from damaging sweeps that happened in previous years. That means our programs, which are accessible through ct.com are going to be available for businesses and residents to take advantage of to help lower their bills during this winter season. In addition to that, Connecticut has taken action to provide for enhanced oversight about how our electric utilities are procuring power for generation service. Our utilities are overseen by PURA and by a procurement manager at PURA that carefully watches and guides how the utilities are, what strategies the utilities are using for procuring electricity for standard service. In Connecticut, that means ensuring the utilities are spreading out when they're purchasing different portions of the electricity they'll need to provide for the generation service rate that's coming up. And because Connecticut has spread those purchases out over time with PURA's leadership, that means that our generation service rates are more insulated from these volatile spikes in energy commodity prices. We've also instituted here in Connecticut stronger protections for consumers who are using third-party suppliers. Of course, 80% of residents are using third-party suppliers to meet their generation service needs. It's really, for some customers, being able to utilize competitive service suppliers is a great strategy for reducing their energy bills, but it's really important that people are paying very careful attention to the fine print in those third-party electric supply offers. And Connecticut has enacted a series of consumer protections for customers of electric suppliers, including prohibiting variable rates, giving PURA the discretion to prevent customers who are designated as utility hardship from being switched to electric suppliers. And just this year, Governor Lamont signed Public Act 21-117 prohibiting cancellation fees for residential customers who are under contract with an electric supplier, as well as strengthening PURA's oversight of electric suppliers. So this is a time that we really advise customers, if you're thinking about shopping for a third-party supply, check out energizect.com, where we have information so you can compare all the rates available, and just be very careful in watching that fine print to make sure that you are aware of all of your rights as a consumer if you engage in a third-party supply offer. In addition, Governor Lamont and with a coalition, including the Attorney General, the Office of Consumer Counsel, the Connecticut Industrial Electric Consumers, and others have joined in advancing a settlement agreement with Eversource Energy, as well as a prior settlement with United Illuminating to provide for some stabilization of our distribution rates, and this resolving issues that arose from the tropical storm ECS investigations that kicked off more than a year ago. As a result of these settlement agreements, we're also pleased to ensure that customers will be able to see some bill credits coming onto their distribution bills in coming weeks. We think that this is really a timely resolution of this challenging issue and gets money back into ratepayers' pockets at a time that they'll really need it. So these are just a few highlighting areas that we are working to lower costs. I also want to highlight with respect to that, again, electricity generation supply. With the rates that have been announced now effective for January 1 by the two utilities, you can see that comparing to rates that have been announced elsewhere in New England, that we are comparing favorably. So for example, in New Hampshire, one of their utilities, Unitil, announced a generation rate topping 17 cents per kilowatt hour. So while we know that the increases that you see at the bottom here for Eversource and United Illuminating going up to 10 to 11 cents per kilowatt hour this winter are a jump from where they were this summer relative to other utilities in other New England states where those rates who have new winter rates that have been announced. Our procurement strategies, again with PURA's strong oversight, have put Connecticut in a good place in terms of the relative generation rate that consumers will be experiencing. So the last message I think is critical to share, and then I'm going to turn the podium over to our sister agencies, is that there is help available for Connecticut customers, for consumers this winter. So while I've just highlighted all the ways that we've been working hard to ensure that prices stay as low as they can for everyone, we also know that this is a time that families and businesses may be struggling, as it's really challenging to see these commodity prices increasing across not only your heating bill, but what you're seeing at the gas pump and the prices you may be paying for electricity. Here at DEEP, we're proud to oversee the state's electric energy efficiency programs for electricity and gas customers. Through these programs, we can provide for tremendous benefits for consumers who take part. All you have to do is go and check out energizedct.com to sign up for a home energy audit. It's a great time to take advantage of those energy-saving measures that are available to you. For most residents, it'll require just a $50 copay to enroll in get a home energy audit that will provide for air sealing and more efficient lighting that will, with lots of benefits totaling more than $1,000 that you'll get by participating. And if for certain income eligible customers, you can receive those services for free. In addition, we're providing for really generous incentives for insulation. Again, a great way to take a bite out of your heating bill. This is a great time. You know, the weather's gotten cooler. We know people are paying attention to those incredible offerings, and it's a great time to go to energizedct.com to find out more about how you can participate. And with that, now I want to turn over the podium to Commissioner Deidre Gifford to talk about some of the heating assistance that's available through DSS.
Thank you, Katie, and good morning, Governor, and Marissa, and Commissioner Mascaro-Bruno. Good morning, everyone. Deidre Gifford, Commissioner of the Department of Social Services. Very happy to be able to talk about some help that's available to Connecticut residents, specifically with respect to their heating this winter. As you heard from Commissioner Dykes, we are anticipating increased heating costs, whether you heat with electricity or propane or natural gas or fuel oil. We're expecting, in most cases, even double-digit percentage increases in those costs. So what we'd like to let people know today is that there is a program that is available to help people with their heating costs. And I want to let you know how consumers can go about getting access to that program. This is called the Connecticut Energy Assistance Program, sometimes known as CEAP. It's a federally funded program administered through the Department of Social Services via contracts with our 9 community action agencies around the state. This year we have what I think is a record amount of assistance available. We will have $135 million available for families in Connecticut for heating assistance this season. That's compared to $83 million that we had last year, which was already an increase over previous years. So we want to make sure people know about this program and that everyone who is eligible has the opportunity to take advantage of it. So who is eligible? You are eligible if you rent or you own your property and you pay for your heating bill. The income limit for eligibility of to the program is 60% of the state median income. That equates to, for a family of 4, $75,000 per year. For an individual, $39,000 per year. So if you make that amount or less, you may be eligible for a benefit to help you cover the costs of your heating fuel this winter. The amount that you will receive through the Connecticut Energy Assistance Program will vary depending on your household size, whether you rent or own, whether you have a vulnerable member of your household, etc. But the basic benefit can be as high as $1,000 for the season to help you defray the costs of your energy bills. So anyone who is meets those income thresholds, or if you are a participant in some of our other DSS programs, you may also be automatically eligible. So for example, if you receive Supplemental Nutrition Assistance, SNAP, you are automatically eligible for the Connecticut Energy Assistance Program. Likewise, if you receive cash assistance from the state, you are automatically eligible. So many families may be eligible to receive this assistance, and we want to encourage everyone who is anticipating challenges paying for their energy over the winter to reach out. Now, how can you find out if you're eligible for this program? First of all, as I mentioned, the program is administered by our 9 community action agencies. They have over 160 intake sites around the state. Those are places like senior centers, municipal buildings, as well as in their own facilities. And how can you find one of those sites? You can call 211. You can go to 211ct.org. You can go to ct.gov/staywarm. And all of those locations or resources will help you find a place to apply for this benefit and give you instructions on how to become eligible. So very important to let consumers know there's $135 million of federal dollars available for energy assistance this year. 211ct.gov/staywarm to find out if you're eligible. I'd like to just acknowledge the team from DSS who has been running this program. Carlene Taylor, who has been with the state for 30 years and has dedicated her career to helping low-income families get heating assistance, is here, as well as her team member, Lynette Pisani. Deb Poland, representing the community action agencies, is here, as well as Patricia Monroe Walker from CRT, which is one of our community action agencies. So with that, I will pass the podium to my colleague, Commissioner Mascaro-Bruno, to talk about rental assistance. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, commissioners, Madam Chair, Governor, and all of you. Thank you for having me today. UnitedCT is a program that many of you knows as the rent relief. The rent relief also have availability for utility payments. The utility payments can be for households that are renters only, no homeowners, and up to 80% of the area median income, which means that a family of 4 is around $82,000 or less. That's the person that qualifies. So far, we have paid $17 million in electric bills from UI and Eversource customers, amounts up to about 10,000 customers that we have paid. 2 ways to apply for UnitedCT. Through the website, unitedct@ct.gov, or the next phase is that we have trying to make it easy for those that do not have access to computers, is we're doing robocalls in partnership with Eversource and UI. So please answer the phone call. English version message is from the governor, a Spanish version is from me. And it's very simple. You have to answer 3 questions. Are you a renter? Are you, how many members in your household, and is your income below 80% of AMI? Is your answer to those questions yes, you pre-qualify. And within 2 weeks, your balance going back up to April 2020 will be paid. So the first 2 weeks of the robocalls, we have been able to qualify 1,800 families, and the amount of money that is going to be paid to Eversource, this is only Eversource right now, we haven't had the data from UI yet, is about $2.8 million. So it's very easy. If you miss that phone call, there is a message that gives you a number, and you can call back, and you will be able to talk to an agent. So it's not a scam. Please answer the phone call, and as I said, the balance will be paid going back up to April 2020. Thank you.
Good morning, Governor, Commissioners. Thank you for having me this morning. My name is Marissa Gillette, and I am the Chairman of the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority. And I'd like to build off of the programs that Commissioner Gifford and Commissioner Mascaro-Bruno just described to you. In addition to those programs, customers of Eversource, UI, and their gas affiliates are also eligible for many additional programs, generally falling under the umbrella known as the matching payment programs. This program is available to protect your service year-round, and it has the same eligibility requirements as described by Commissioner Gifford. In fact, it works in conjunction and is incremental to the benefits of the SEAP program that she described. Over the course of the year, Eversource UI and their affiliates provide literally what the program's named as, a matching payment to all the successful payments that you make during the year. Enrollment in this program protects you from having your heating source shut off year-round by those entities. To enroll, we are encouraging customers to call their utility and ask, am I eligible to be coded hardship? You can also get this same information by calling 211 or contacting the community action agencies, as Commissioner Gifford described. In addition to that, programs and services are not limited to customers that are struggling financially at the moment. In fact, if you are newly struggling as a result of the pandemic and all the challenges that we're facing right now, PURA has also mandated that not just our electric and gas utilities, but also our water utilities are required to offer what is known as the COVID-19 payment program right now. Eligibility is open to anyone that asks for it. If you are a residential customer of one of those regulated utilities, you're eligible to be enrolled in a payment plan up to 24 months, waiving interest and late fees. So again, you can enroll in one of those programs through the end of the current emergency, which is currently set to expire in February. The benefit of enrolling in any of the programs that you've heard today, MPP, the program through Unite CT, SEAP, all of these programs that we're discussing, if you are actively enrolled in these programs, your service is protected from shut-off. And that's really a benefit that's codified in statute already through the Winter Protection Program that keeps your heating source protected if you are a customer of limited means through May 1st each year, November 1st to May 1st each year. Finally, if you are a customer that is better situated this heating season, I would really encourage you to reach out to some of the amazing organizations that we have in the state, like Operation Fuel. We have Brenda Watson and members of her team here. Through your electric bill, you can participate in the Add a Dollar program and help provide assistance to folks who are not currently available to meet their needs at this time. So with that, PURA will continue to work with our stakeholders to work on the underlying issues surrounding energy affordability in this state. Commissioner Dykes did a great job discussing all the ways that we've been working together to tackle those challenges, but we want to make sure that in the short term, no customer goes without heat this winter. With that, I will turn it back over to Commissioner Dykes, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Chairman Gillette. And now I'd like to welcome Governor Lamont to say a few words to close out our program.
All right, well, thanks, Katie, and well presented. I appreciate it. This is why I thought this was important to do. It's been a tough year and a half in this state, and then we're confronted by the headlines, brownouts, spike in energy prices, 30, 40% increase, all at the same time that the middle class feels like it's really getting slammed. So I wanted you to know what we're doing about it. At the state level, middle class getting slammed, we've held the line on taxes. Property tax around the state is actually down a little bit over the last year or two. That doesn't happen very often. Deirdre's helped take the lead in terms of reducing out-of-pocket health care costs for folks, make it a little easier for them. Beth Buy on daycare and child care. What we're trying to do to make a college no out-of-pocket debt for you, especially at the community colleges. But that's all well and good, but what happens if my electric bill goes up that much? What happens if my heating bill goes up that much? What are you able to do about that? And I think what I've just heard is that Connecticut is a much better position than a lot of our peers because of some of the decisions that have been made over the last year and over the last few years. You know, gasoline prices for your car spiked up big time. We've all seen that. I don't have much control over that, except for the fact to tell you that if we're giving you all the incentives we can, the price of electric vehicles has gone down. This ought to be one more reason to convince you now's the time to move to electric vehicles. It'll save you $400-500 a year in gasoline and lower maintenance costs. You know, on the electric bills, a couple of things we've done that are reflected in the fact that you know, we were one of the highest priced electric states in the lower 48. And we're doing better, especially compared to our peers. You saw it compared to New Hampshire. You saw it compared to Massachusetts. There are a few reasons for that. As Katie said, when we first took over back, you know, almost 3 years ago, first thing we were confronted was Millstone was about to pull the plug, and what that meant in terms of lights going out, what that meant in terms of having to replace carbon-free nuclear power with carbon-generating alternatives was a lousy choice. And we decided to make a deal with Millstone over a period of many years at a fixed price of 4.99 cents per kilowatt hour. And what that meant was that early on, didn't look like that great a deal. I mean, the price of natural gas was so cheap, they were almost giving it away, and we were paying 4.99 for carbon-free nuclear power. You know, today, with a high price of, you know, natural gas, this is a good deal. And our carbon-free nuclear power is subsidizing your bills, and that makes a big difference. I think that Pure and the legislature some years ago told UI and Eversource, our main power providers, don't buy all your electricity on the spot market. I want you to phase that in over a period of a year or so on quarterly increments. That's called a hedging strategy. That means, frankly, when prices are going down, you're paying a little more because you didn't buy everything at the bottom of the market. But it also means we're not Texas and Colorado and those other places where if you buy everything on the spot market, your rates go up 100, 200%. We've phased in that, so even though the price of natural gas is at historic highs right now, we've bought most of our power at a lot less cost than that, and that's very advantageous. It doesn't solve for world peace. Our rates are still going up, but going up a lot less quickly than you see in other places without the sudden shocks that could really be incredibly destabilizing. We've worked very hard with our utilities, as you know, and after ICEA, there were some performance-based metrics put in place. One of the things we wanted to do was hold the line on the distribution costs. So that's frozen for, I think it's 2.5 or 3 years. So these are all ways that we can mitigate some of the bad effects from the spiking energy costs. It's just, you know, supply and demand go out of whack every once in a while, and demand for oil and gas is going this way, and supply is going that way, and Connecticut is relatively well protected compared to our peers going forward. Along the way, I think we're making some long-term decisions that are going to make a big difference. Probably the most important one we've made, aside from keeping the carbon-free nuclear power for the foreseeable future, is the biggest commitment to wind power this state, just about any state, has ever made. And over the course of the next few years, we'll be replacing carbon-producing electricity with carbon-free wind power at a fixed price again, as opposed to that volatility of buying everything on the spot market. You know, same thing in terms of solar, and same thing in terms of energy efficiency. You know, we were taking a lot of money out of the energy efficiency funds and paying for other things, which is not the right way to do. I think energy efficiency is one of the best investments we can make. When it goes to you know, working families and middle-class families, a lot of them are leaking, you know, living in leaky houses. They're paying 2 or 3 times more for their electricity and their heat than they need to. You know, we're providing $180 million a year, and we're employing an awful lot of people who are able to you know, go to your community, apply for this, and we can save you, you know, 60, 70 cents on the dollar, depending on your home, one more way that we can hold down electric and heating prices for you. And by the way, electricity and heat not used is carbon not produced, and doing our fair share going forward. That said, ISO, which is the regional consortium we work with when it comes to purchasing, electricity, has taken a look at Connecticut, taken a look at our region, and said because of some of these investments we've made, it looks like our demand for electricity is probably going to be about 1,000 megahertz less, 1,000 megahertz less than what we had predicted just several years ago. And Katie just informed me that as of yesterday, ISO has told FERC we no longer have a need for the potential Killingly power plant. That's a big deal to show you as we continue to move towards energy efficiency and reducing our need for fossil fuel-based power, what a difference that's making. And for those of you who really feel in need and stretched and kicked, even with the smaller rate increases you see from Eversource and UI, what you see in terms of your heating bill, especially if it's oil-based, I think you've heard from Deirdre and Sayla, some of the support we can provide. You go to 211. This is ways that we can help you out. Make sure your power stays on. Make sure your heat stays on. Make sure that you're going to be okay during what could be a cold winter, what could be a winter with relatively expensive solutions out there. And I want you to take advantage of these programs. You take advantage of these programs because it means a lot for you, it means a lot for your family, and the security that it gives you going forward. And also, it holds down rates for everybody. A lot of this is federal funding, so if we're taking care of you, you don't go into arrearages, then your arrearage doesn't go into the rate base, driving up prices for everybody. So it's one more way we can help the middle class and help everybody struggle through what could otherwise be a tough time. I think we're making good progress in a complicated time. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Governor. And now I think we have time for a few questions.
You mentioned generation prices have gone down a bit, but overall we're still number one in electricity prices among 48. So I'm wondering how many factor those generation prices.
Sure. So the generation price, just to confirm, the generation prices have gone up relative to where they were for the the July to December standard service rates. Now we're seeing an increase, but it's on par with where it's, relatively within where it's been in past winters. But that's 30% of the electricity bill for the average customer. So, we still are high ranked in terms of the continental U.S. in terms of our overall rates. I will say that said, because of investments in energy efficiency, Connecticut in energy bills in national rankings tend to be not at the not the highest in the country. But in terms of our rates and looking at that, we have had the unenviable position of being near the top. But I anticipate as we get updated data, as more utilities start to share what their generation rates are going to be for the winter period going forward, and as we see some of the impacts of this relief in terms of stabilizing distribution rates, that may change that ranking.
Steve, because the state of Connecticut has had 20 years of electric deregulation. There's a lot of people out there that I talk to that say, it's a failed experiment. What do you say to that contention?
Well, I think it's no surprise. I've been, raised a lot of concerns. I've been pretty vocal about the concerns that I have as a state, policymaker about the functioning of the ICE New England energy market. We've heard from the ICE New England that they're having a lot of concern. We've heard from FERC some current concerns around the preparedness of our grid from a reliability perspective, let alone from a cost perspective, as we head into this winter season. DEEP just recently released our integrated resources plan for the state, where we detailed that history of deregulation and how it's resulted in the ISO creating a market that is overly dependent on natural gas generation. And so that's presented, we've had challenges in this market when costs were low, because it meant that resources that we critically need for reliability, like Millstone, couldn't make enough money to keep going. Connecticut had to step up to solve that problem for the region. Now prices are high, and the ICE in New England is identifying we still have problems because of the lack of non-gas resources that are going to be available to keep the lights on if we should experience a period of a cold stretch during this winter period. I don't think it makes any sense for the ratepayers, for the businesses and families that are dependent on the ICE of New England in this market to keep the lights on and provide for affordable electricity. That our best hope is to wish that, or to hope that it doesn't get too cold. We need a grid that's going to work to accommodate all the diverse fuel and clean fuel resources that states are investing in, and that can provide reliability for customers. And unfortunately, I think at this particular moment, the ICE New England market structure hasn't been delivering that. That's why we joined with Governor Lamont, joined with 4 other governors in New England to issue a statement last year calling for reforms to the wholesale market through NESCO, the New England States Committee on Electricity. We've been working hard on a regional basis to advocate for more transparency, more accountability in the governance of the ICE New England, more reforms in the wholesale markets, and in how transmission is being planned for. Unfortunately, I'm very heartened that we have such a strong consensus among the New England states for the needs for these reforms. Certainly, as we head into this winter season, I think it illustrates how urgent it is for the ISO to make more progress in that direction.
Can I ask the governor a question? Governor, if I'm a consumer out there, I'm scratching my head. I'm like, especially if I'm a tenant or a consumer, you just come up with this settlement that freezes distribution rates, but it also didn't, lower the return on investment for the utility profit. So, you froze rates until 2023, but my rates are still going up. Explain.
It is a complicated mess, talking about regulation. Distribution is one of several factors. Obviously, power generation, Christine, is another. You've seen what's going on with prices there. We get a bill that's passed along by the feds. That goes up as well. But I think if I was a consumer, I would be somewhat heartened by the fact that we are no longer the worst in the lower 48. We're doing better than a lot of our peers in this region right now. And we've made some good investments that will stabilize our rates going forward. And that's why our rates are going up less than they are in neighboring states.
But it still has to be frustrating for you. There's only so much you can do, and consumers out there are like, my rates are still going up.
Yeah, it's frustrating. We don't control enough of it. If I've learned anything over the course of this last couple of years is control of your supply chain is really important. We learned that during COVID the hard way. And I'd like to think that the investments we're making mean we're a little less dependent upon the mood of the Saudi sheiks and OPEC when it comes to the price of oil. We're going to be more energy independent as a state. Not energy independent, but more. Wind power is something that we'll have more control over. Nuclear is something we have more control over. Solar is things we have more control over. But look, if New York doesn't want to allow a pipeline to go through that allows us to access natural gas, I can't tell New York this is what we got to do. If Maine decides they don't want to allow us to get carbon-free hydropower from Connecticut because they don't want to build transmission lines down there, we don't have as much control over our destiny as we should. We're getting more control over our destiny.
Commissioner Knight, can you address, do you think, we all know that Eversource doesn't generate power anymore, it has to buy it. Do you think that consumers should start looking for third-party suppliers? Is this a push to do that?
So with respect to the generation portion of your bill, that 30%, of average of what a customer's bill represents, you have the option here in Connecticut to choose to purchase your electricity through the utility standard service or to purchase from a third-party supplier. And you can find all the third-party supply offers on Energize CT. It's a great resource, provide transparency for this market so you can comparison shop. About 80% of residential customers now are opting to purchase through the electric utility, the distribution utility, on standard service, and that's why we're sharing these numbers in terms of the generation service rate, because the majority of residents here in the state are purchasing their generation supply that way. That said, some customers love to purchase through third-party suppliers. They can shop around, they can find some deals on there. You have that ability, that option here in the state. But we know, particularly in the polar vortex in 2013, 2014, a lot of customers who were on those rates may not have been paying close attention, got hit with variable rates that were increasing. There's a lot of fine print, a lot of ways that consumers got hurt who were participating in that third-party market. We've actually seen a shift since then of more residents choosing to purchase through standard service. But residents have that option. They can go and look. We just advise everyone, if you are purchasing through a third-party supplier, just be educated. Make sure you know all of the terms and conditions that are in there, and know that there are a lot more consumer protections that have been placed in that market since that time frame. Pura does a great job of providing a lot of oversight and enforcement around enforcing those consumer protections. When they're going to see, sorry?
What kind of increase are they going to see on their bill? Are we talking about a $20 increase?
It's roughly around that range for folks who, for an average residential customer. That's why it's really important for people to be aware and also know what ways that you can help reduce your usage, make your home your business more energy efficient to bring that bill down, even as these generation costs are going up.
In regard to the utility plan, it's been unclear for a while as to any one entity can truly kill it. So the ISO letter said basically to Killenly that would not be part of the next auction. So does that effectively kill it? Is this the final word, or might something else happen that might allow NTE to keep pitching?
Sure. So the ICE New England took steps yesterday to request FERC's approval to cancel the capacity supply obligation that the Killingly plant was awarded in 2019 when it cleared the ICE New England's annual capacity auction. So for a new plant that clears in a capacity auction, they have essentially an obligation to build that plant and be ready to be online and generating power within 3 years. There's a variety of different critical path milestones that a generator has to reach to give the ICE New England assurances that that power plant is actually going to be ready to serve customers and support the reliability of the grid within that 3-year time period. I think the ICE New England's communication, while redacted because evidently a lot of business sensitive information, but their filing at FERC indicates that the Killingly plant was not meeting those critical path milestones, which include achieving financial close, purchasing equipment, and moving towards construction, and so on and so forth. So the next step is the ISO New England is asking for FERC's approval for ISO to terminate the capacity supply obligation. We don't know if that will be challenged by the developer, but if FERC approves that the ISO's request, then that would end the capacity supply obligation. That would end the yeah.
All right, so I think in your opinion, this pretty much kills it, but it's not quite the final word.
Well, we've heard for a while now that there have been questions around the viability of that plant. It bid in at a very low price in the ICE New England market when it initially cleared. And so I think this latest communication from the ISO suggests that the ISO has reached that conclusion as well, that this plant is not viable. And I'll also note that shortly after the ISO New England cleared that plant and extended that capacity supply obligation in 2019, the ISO then subsequently updated its forecast of how much power generation they think the region needs, and they reduced it by 1,000 megawatts. So it really has raised a question, not only separate apart from the viability of this particular project, it kind of raises a question about how much the region needs this particular facility to meet the reliability needs of the electricity grid. And under today's yep, go ahead.
In the year since the four governors urged reforms from ISO, is there any concrete
So there are 3 areas where the states have been asking the ISO New England to improve. One is in improving transmission planning. For example, in our IRP, we noted we have, made a lot of investments in our transmission grid, but more investment is needed in order to integrate all the new fuel diverse, clean resources that the states are building and to get more value and reliability for ratepayers. So the ISO has taken some steps to embrace more proactive planning for transmission. That is a place we've seen some progress. But the other 2 areas that we've asked for improvement is with respect to the wholesale market reform. Just speaking for Connecticut, we've pointed to this ISO New England market is essentially produced investment almost exclusively in natural gas resources, even though the ISO New England's own analysis has indicated that without millstone, without nuclear, without non-gas resources available, we could face rolling blackouts if gas supply isn't available for that enormous fleet of gas generation that the ISO's built. I've seen very little progress from the ISO New England in advancing any wholesale market reforms that are going to meaningfully address that challenge, not to ensure that ratepayers we're getting credit for all of the clean energy resources we've been investing in, as well as to ensure that the ISO New England can come up with a better plan and a better market design to provide for reliability in the instance of this gas dependence. So we're still waiting. And then governance, I think, is another area that we've asked for reforms. The ISO New England provided a very unsatisfying response to the states about 2-3 weeks ago, just indicating that they would be willing to meet with the states more, but not agreeing to any of the concrete suggestions that the states had provided. For example, to provide for more access to journalists and to the public into their deliberations, or to share information reports with the public about how they're reaching their decisions. We continue to be concerned that there's not a seat at the table for states, that the states are not being included or given adequate engagement in terms of how the market design is occurring, but also that the general public is struggling to have access to critical information about how the ISO New England is making its decisions. And so in that respect, I think we're still waiting for meaningful reforms.
Hi. Absolutely. So the settlement it's for EverSource customers. So customers are going to see a return of $65 million, which results in a total of $35 worth of credits for an average consumer who uses about 700 kilowatt hours a month. So all customers of EverSource are eligible for that credit. It will be returned based on your usage over I believe it was the December and January bills. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and I just wanted to follow up. We haven't been able to speak since the vote, and I understand that you were no vote. Can you just explain why you voted no?
So that's correct. I was not able to support the settlement at that time. It didn't mean that I disagreed with the objectives as I understood them, which I share those objectives, and I applaud the governor and the attorney general and all the parties for working towards that. I think the dissent is about 3.5 pages, and hopefully it speaks for itself, but really the settlement has no, I don't believe that has any bearing on what we're here to discuss today. The energy affordability programs are they stand for themselves, and there's nothing that the settlement or PURA's decision on that matter could have done to address the generation rates that we're seeing today. It's a totally separate piece. And to the earlier question about, what do you say to a consumer who doesn't understand this? PURA's working really hard with our stakeholders on a bill redesign that will provide more transparency about what portions of your bill go to which entity, right? We have transmission, which is governed by the federal government. We have generation, which is really a pass-through. What Commissioner Dykes talked about today. We've put into place best practices to make sure we're procuring generation the most cost effectively as we can, and I think that's a success. But ultimately, the wholesale market controls that rate, and then the distribution rates are the portion that are governed by PURA. So over the next couple of months, we hope to roll out a new bill redesign that will provide some additional insight into that.
So it doesn't control over the distribution rates, but just explain why the delivery and the supply rates are then increasing. The consumers are probably not understanding that part of it.
Sure, absolutely. So the generation rates that we're here to discuss today, you can think about that as your supply. It's the commodity. So those are the electrons that are generated by, in the future, hopefully offshore wind. Right now, Millstone and other natural gas generators. That generation rate is governed by the wholesale market, which is overseen by the ISO that we've been discussing today. So those rates typically change twice a year. January 1 and July 1, they always go up for the first half of the year because of natural gas rates generally, and they always go down in the second half of your year. And that's about 30 to 35% of your bill, depending on the season. So as a result of deregulation, PURA no longer directly controls that price. It's set by the wholesale market. It's the remainder of your bill, the distribution portion of your bill that PURA directly regulates, and then there's an increasing share of your bill is attributable to transmission, which is like if you're thinking about the highway system as a metaphor, the highway that transverses states. That's the really big transmission, and it's delivering the electrons from where they're being generated out of state to in-state, and that's governed by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission.
Does the absence of a permanent consumer council in Connecticut hamper the ability of consumers to be represented before PURA?
Would you like to address that?
Keep going.
The Office of Consumer Counsel, which is the statutory agency charged with representing all customers in proceedings before PURA, is a valuable stakeholder in the processes, or the dockets that PURA administers. I really value the input that they provide in the dockets, and I would look forward to continuing to work with them in the future. I think they're a competent agency, and they're putting forward positions, right now that are representing the ratepayers. So I value their opinion in our dockets.
Governor, that is a question for you. Why don't we have a permanent consumer council? It's an active position.
Well, we have a strong Office of Consumer Counsel, and they weigh in every day on behalf of the consumer. We know who our next consumer counsel is going to be. We just have to find somebody to replace that person at where they are right now. And that's taken a little longer than we thought. I think it'll all happen within a week or 3.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.